Yes. Yes, I can hear.
Now, 2 Corps is our largest strike force. Strike, the book Corps. And the BGS is the Brigadier General Staff. In charge of General Staff means all operational matters, planning for operations. The number one staff officer, the Corps Commander, who's a Lieutenant General. And also this, what will come into this is education.
Okay.
And as I said, education is part of training for war. So I got this job, and I was in a job from, NDC finished in 1977, and I reported by about January 1978. So I was there for whole of 78, whole of 79, and whole of half of it, almost 2.5 years. The Corps commander was a man called Lieutenant General Zorawar Singh Bakshi, or Zoru Bakshi. I had spoken of him before because when I was in 19 Div as a major in the Kashmir Valley, Baramulla, he was commanding the reserve brigade of that area called 68 Infantry Brigade or 68 Mountain Brigade. Very powerful brigade. I tell you that it very powerful brigade that it did the attacks during the 1965 war in the hilly areas which had terrorists and all that had come. Under him, the Hajipur Pass was captured by Ranjit Singh Dayal, who was a major, got a Mahavir Chakra, which is an area between Uri and Punch. So Jawar Bakshi was a very good commander. I knew him earlier when General Chaudhary was the army chief and I was in his staff as a major. Rawar Bakshi or Zuru Bakshi, as we call him, used to be a lieutenant colonel in the military operations directorate. Many times came to the chief's office to bring certain discussion files, etc., for the chief to see. And I had the occasion to meet him once or twice there. The short man, very deliberate in his work, and with great determination to carry out what has to be done, and a very sharp head. So he was the corps commander, and it was a lot of learning experience to be his BGS, first staff officer. Our chief of staff, a major general under him, was Mohan Tulli, ML Tulli. He was a parachute officer, but he had a different view on many things. So it's a little difficult to get past him and to go to the corps commander to discuss it. Anyway, that's part of life. We had a big staff, and I had certain colonels under me who all later became generals. And there were 9 brigadiers in the corps of various armed services in supporting arms, from the artillery, from the engineers, from the signals, and so on, all became very good friends. We had an armored division under our command, which was in Patiala, that area, Ambala, Patiala, and all that. And we had 2 infantry divisions under our command, and a lot of independent brigades. We had a huge engineer set up under us, 2, 3 regiments of engineers of the latest equipment to cross enemy obstacles like minefields and canals and bridges, making bridges and things, and also to put up these defenses whenever we wanted. So it's a very massive command, and to try and understand how each one works. Also, I must tell you the first quadrat anti-air battery of anti-aircraft systems. We've recently purchasing from Russia something worth $5 billion, which is coming into India much against the will of the United States. That's a development of this quadrat missile system. It's a radar, and each missile has about 4 or 5 trucks and radars and things. They can pick up enemy aircraft or missiles from a distance, and this thing, when it's fired, well, it is got a good hit probability against the aircraft. So we managed to get that. There are batteries which can be taken in offensive operations also, leapfrog and all that, to give you cover against enemy air attack. So I in my role helped to raise this regiment and also to have it trained, etc. We also had some commando groups under us, parachute commandos, whom we were required to report on and to train. So it was a good experience. I'll tell you a little about the Chandimandar cantonment, military cantonment. You know, mostly the military has been living in shacks and temporary housing, which the British had left during World War II, kacha houses and kacha, and of course there was a lot of agitation to say that you have to provide proper accommodation for troops, their families, officers' families, and also for the barracks for the troops, and covered accommodation for tanks and vehicles, because otherwise they deteriorate in the weather. If you keep a sophisticated equipment like this quadrant battery, for instance, out in the sun and the rain all the time, it deteriorates. So you have to have proper garages and things for that in peacetime. So I'm glad to say that this cantonment that was Chandigarh was a very modern cantonment. I don't know if you've been to Chandigarh. There is a place called Panchkula nearby, which is in Haryana. And just above Panchkula, along the road going to Kalka, Simla, is an area which is full of thorn jungles and hillocks, no water. And Pratap Singh Kairon was the chief minister of Punjab, and the army was after him to give so many acres of land to build a cantonment for a command headquarters. That means the command headquarters is where the army commander stays. So he said, give the Faujis a dirty piece of ground, a horrible piece of ground which we can't manage, so that they sort it out and they repair it and they get it going. So he gave this horrible area with no water, dry hills, etc. And by the time the army built this cantonment and built roads, took a lot of attention. For instance, this chief of staff, Mohan Tulli, as I mentioned, a difficult man to get on with, but nonetheless very fond of gardening and very fond of arboriculture. He put down trees, he put down gardens, he put down all sorts of things which changed the weather in the area. And later on, after my departure from there, the corps commanders that came, or the army commanders that came, and the engineering staff, we had a golf course which we made for us. The army likes to make a golf course because it's one of the methods of getting out after your office work and stretching your limbs a bit and hitting a little ball around. But the point is, it is all hilly and rocky area. Even on a so-called fairway, if you hit down the middle, it could hit a rock and ball could go flying anywhere. In due course, later, after my retirement, when I went there, they had taken all these rocks out and beautiful grass and beautiful trees and flowers had produced because they managed to get water. Now, water management is something that the whole world is looking at. Now, let me say a few words about water management. I think hard work by the army is also one of the examples that we could look at. In Tukor area, there was a little nala behind our houses. You see, there's the corps commander's house. There was a huge division. I mean, the corps, it was built for the army really, but the corps headquarters was there because the army was in Simla. The army headquarters was in Simla. That is the army commander's office. But eventually they were to come down from Simla and occupy this space. Meanwhile, the corps was placed. So there were 7 or 8 nice bungalows for brigadiers, and there was a nice bungalow for the corps commander, and there was a 4-storied high building, something like the Oberoi Hotel in Delhi, huge building, the corps headquarters. So trees were laid down and all around and a lot of arboriculture done. There was a thing called the Gorari Nala. It's a little stream behind our houses, which used to only activate when the monsoon was on. So gushing water used to go down this. So it was in a deep trench sort of thing, winding its way through the rear of our accommodation, starting from the hills, because when rain comes down, it has to go somewhere. So they used to go along this. Now, what one of the people, they dammed it. They dammed it and produced 3 lakes. Each lake would be about half a kilometer long and about a quarter kilometer wide. They produced 3 lakes by damming. And the water was put after the dam into depressions in the area, high depression. The result of this was that all the water wells which were dry got water in them. And in Panchkula town, which is across the road from the hilly area where the corps headquarters was, or the cantonment was, Panchkula is a nice big town contiguous to Chandigarh. Many people have houses there. They had a lot of water problems because all their wells were dry. All their wells got water when they did that. So water management means that you have to take rainwater and stop it and build it into canals or into lakes or into jheels. What people have done in this country in the old days, in the ancient times, every village had a jheel next to it. So that jheel made sure that the water was available in your wells. And now people, as they grew in their population, building houses and all that, they cut out the jheels and started building houses there. With the result, it became a dry land, especially in the whole of India. There's a shortage of water, of drinking water. Now you're trying to take water from rivers, and river water is polluted firstly, and the river waters are drying up because, the global warming and all. So these jheels are very important. And there are examples all over India, including the Deccan Plateau, where people have taken village help and made a jheel, and all their water started functioning and greenery is coming up, and they're living a happier life than others who don't do this. So the army also did this, not only here, but in Ahmednagar, which the Armored Corps Center and School. They built there was a very dry area with a little stream only activated during the monsoon. Dam that, and now 2-3 days, the whole temperature of the place is dropped. And in Chandi Mandir, this cantonment that I went to, even sailing boats have been put on these lakes. So it's a cantonment which first of its kind in India, with a very nice setup and all that. And even our National Defense College course, which go on trips, some of the people used to ask me, since I was an ex-member of the National Defence College, to say, look, we want to bring our National Defense College to see this cantonment of yours. And sure enough, we arranged that visit, gave them talks as to how to arrange the ecology of a cantonment. So the army tries to do that, and that's a great advantage for our country because dry areas are converted into habitable areas. Now, more about this, we had a lot of training, and our operational requirements were right up to the border of Pakistan in the north of the Thar Desert, north of Rajasthan, and Ganganagar district of southern Punjab. You see, all those areas were under the 2 Corps. And we had the equivalent of about 7 or 8 divisions, because we had 3 or 4 full divisions. Then we had a number of independent brigades, armored brigades, infantry brigades, etc., which totaled to a large amount of things. So there's a lot of staff work. And I did complain to the Corps commander that we are working from morning till night to try and get the firing system working, because there's so many staff and so many people. Really, a Corps headquarters is supposed to manage up to 3 divisions, but we are managing up to the equivalent of about 6 divisions. So he reported to Army headquarters, and they were very happy to post extra staff. For instance, I was a brigadier BGS. I was made BGS A, another BGS was posted as B to handle certain aspects of the work. Now that relieved some of the work, but I must tell you, when you command a group of troops as a corps commander, let us say, one man has to command. Similarly, if there is a BGS who is supporting him for operational and other such tasks, and the planning thereof and the training thereof, one man has to do it. 2 men can't do it. So it was not a happy circumstance. Eventually, I think after much of our complaints, we got a completely new corps headquarters. That was placed in Bathinda, that is known as the 10 Corps. And our chief of staff, who was Mohan Tulli, was sent there as a corps commander. And that Bathinda area had no water, it was desert. But by the time General Tulli had sorted it out, he had borrowed a canal from one of the personal liaison with one of the coal-fired electrical plants, which had a canal going through there because they wanted water. So he took a branch of that canal, brought it into his cantonment, and created a garden. Even spotted deer were found running around there. He converted the desert to a garden so that we could live a happy life. When you're not fighting the enemy and getting killed or getting injured, it's a good thing to live comfortably. I told you once earlier, when Jawaharlal Nehru visited the Armored Division, when I was a second lieutenant in 1950, and he went to the 1st Armored Brigade, 3 tank regiments, in outside Amritsar in the various paddy fields, no, not paddy fields, but the groves, pear groves and other groves. And the division had gone to Hyderabad, the Hyderabad police action. It was the armored division who did that. And so they had got some of the caravans for the brigadier to live in and the senior officers to live in, appointed by the Hyderabad railways, which was some of the, because the Nizam was a very rich chap, so his railways were very well appointed. Their railway trains, carriages were a beauty. I mean, we still haven't matched that standard. So some of our caravans were made like railway carriages with absolute good fittings. And Jawaharlal Nehru looked at one of these where Brigadier Dargalkar was then commanding the brigade and said, "Look, you are damn comfortable." And the brigadier told him, "Mr. Prime Minister, any bloody fool can be uncomfortable. It's up to you. You have to work hard to be comfortable." Okay. Now, in the exercises, a lot of training, because to exercise these formations, we used to go into the Thar Desert. I don't know if you know this area. Ganganagar district has a thing called the Gang Canal, which was made by Raja Ganga Singh of Bikaner. And this Gang Canal goes through Ganganagar area. It was open desert. By making a canal, which is an offshoot from the Harike headworks of Punjab, he paid for it. It is the granary of India as far as your kinus and maltas and things like that are concerned. Citrus fruit, right? The point here is that if you look at the Satluj River, which joins the Indus and becomes the border with Pakistan, and the Ravi River is on our side, but the Indus is on the Pakistani side. The Ravi River is where the border is. Ravi is also tributary of the Satluj, of the Indus. British had developed a lot of canal systems on the other side of the so-called Radcliffe line, which divided India and Pakistan. That part of Punjab, western side, has got huge canal systems. Whereas on this side of Punjab, part of it became Haryana later, there were no canals. Why? Because the British were very fond. After Maharaja Ranjit Singh died and the Sikh army decided to function under the British flag, and they're very good troops, because they did so well for the British Raj, extra development was done in Punjab and people given jagirs, JCOs, NCOs who did well were given jagirs, so many acres of land and canal, beautiful production. Your famous juices of orange juices and lemon juices and all that were produced by Kisan juices, which have gone to Bangalore now, but which was in the Montgomery district of Punjab, which is opposite the Ganganagar sector. We made it a Garden of Eden really, with water. So Gang Canal was made to try and replicate that on our side. And those people have become very rich. They're all divided into little squares of villages and farms called Chuck this, Chuck number this, and Chuck number that. They're very rich. I happened to visit with my general officer, Ganganagar. There was a meter gauge railway line, and we wanted the government to make it a broad gauge railway line so that movement of tanks and troops could become easier from hinterland. I just tell you a story what happened there. The brigade commander was a chap called Brigadier Saran Prasad. Now, Saran Prasad and I were the same batch, same company in the Indian Military Academy, and we were very good friends. We both joined the academy on the same date, and we got commissioned on the same day. So he was commanding the brigade there, and I was the Brigadier General Staff of the Corps. We were very good friends. Whatever he wanted, I had to make sure he got. You see? So we visited there, and he had a party in the evening for the Corps commander. He was going to meet the local people and their families. So there must have been about 20 or 25 of these local big shots. Now, let me describe these people. They are very rich, but they're dressed like a villager. You've got a safa on top. You've got thick chaplis underneath to till the soil. You've got a dhoti and you've got a kurta. See? And you've got a big mustache hanging down like this. And so one of them told the new Brigadier Saran Prasad that, "Who is that small brigadier next to you?" He said, "That's BGS." He said, "What is a BGS?" He said, "He's the boss man, he's the CMO's brigadier of the Corps, and he's helping the Corps commander do his work." So this fellow asked him, he said, then that means he's an influential man. So Saran Prasad told him, yes, yes, of course he's influential. You want to talk to him? I said, yes. So he came to me, he said, look, VN, would you like to go and meet that chap you want to meet? So I went to him and said, "Ah, ye batlao kya haal hai?" They are all mostly Sikhs. Kya haal hai, vagara? He says, Brigadier Sahab, will you help me? Yes, of course I'll help you. What do you want? He says, here's this daughter of mine, very pretty girl. She must have been about 18. I want to get her married. I said, so then what's the problem? You're a rich man, you get married. He says, no, I want an army captain to marry her. You detail an army captain from this area to marry her. So I said, well, we are a military with a lot of discipline, but if I can't order somebody to marry someone, I mean, it has a question of somebody agreeing to do so. He said, well, whatever way you do, kindly arrange it. Talk to 2, 3 of the young men. I see so many handsome young fellows who are all captain. I said, but let me tell you, the captain Saab has got no money. Huh? He's not a rich chap. And your daughter may not get the lifestyle, the hard lifestyle of a military wife, who's mostly abandoned with children to fend for herself, with not much money to do so. You're a very rich chap, so maybe you should find some rich fellow here to marry her. He said, no, these chaps are all gundas. They make money under the table, out over the table. I don't want my lovely daughter to marry a person with no character and conduct, but these army officers have it. And don't worry about money. I've got plenty. If you want, I'll give it. So I let the word go in that brigade for any young captain to marry a pretty girl with plenty of money. I mean, the 2, 3 chaps did came forward, and I'm glad to tell you that one of them did get married. So that's it. That's the attitude there. They've got plenty of money, but they don't have character and conduct. I want to give you the importance of these 2 words, which we try and inculcate in our jawans and in our officers, but unfortunately in the civil world, it is not given accentuation. Character and conduct. Not only tell the truth, but be the truth. And don't put underhand games for your own advantage. See? So I told you earlier when I was in the Indian Military Academy, that this is, by the way, British training. Whatever you may say, that yes, the British looted us and all that, but the military taught us a lot of things. And Lord Chetwood, who was the commander-in-chief, when the Indian Military Academy was opened in 1932, he put those letters in his first speech. He said that the safety, welfare, and honor, safety, welfare, and honor of your country comes first, always and every time. The welfare, safety, the safety and welfare of your troops come second. Your own ease, comfort, and safety come last, always and every time. That means the officer, the leader, has to make himself subservient to the welfare and honor of his country and the safety of his troops. First, his last. This is not taught in civil. In civil corporate sector, it's me first, everybody else later. Here in the military, you teach, you are last. That's why we lead from the front and, look after our jawans and get the faithful service of people who don't necessarily want to go and get killed in the battlefield. The example has to be done by officers going to the front. This is military training, and I accentuated the Indian Military Academy and the Staff College and the National Defense College and the National Defense College and of course the National Defense Academy, where this training is given. And then of course, colleagues make sure that when you reach your unit, you've gone through the places and you have to function like this. Now, next thing is to have a large exercise. Now, the only area for exercises for various formations was the desert area, where a canal, there are 2 Indira Gandhi canals that were made, twin canals, which go through the desert to give water. And I must tell you, the desert is a desert. It wasn't always so. Ecology would like to study as to why it became a desert. Even the great civilizations of Mohenjo-daro and all that, which is in Pakistan, Indus, in desert area now. It wasn't always so. It was full of greenery and trees and water and everything. That's why people selected to build towns there. What happened? Why did it change? Of course, there are weather changes, but the main thing is water. The main thing is whether fresh water is available or not available. So now in the desert where the Indira Gandhi Canal comes, there are these sub-canals which go out according to the slope of the land. And where the finger of water goes out into the desert, there's greenery, there's trees, beautiful, fruit, you name it. Then there were certain depressions near Suratgarh, which is the southern part of Punjab. In Suratgarh, there were huge depressions. And so sometimes when the rains come and there's too much water in the Indira Gandhi Canal, they let out the water in that area. Because there 7 or 8 lakes formed there. Huge lakes, it's about 40 feet deep and about a kilometer long. See, and when we went there, we found huge fish inside there. I must tell you something about Bengal, who are fish eaters. Most of the fish for Calcutta comes from East Bengal, from Bangladesh. Now, because of some politics, when Begum Zia was the Prime Minister of East Pakistan, and some tutu moima went on between West Bengal and East Bengal, East Bengal, to punish West Bengal, stopped the fish from going to the Calcutta market. With the result, all the Bengali population very upset. There's no machi. You see? So there was a retired colonel in Suratgarh whom I met. He's very well off. He had 4 or 5 desert-going vehicles and, 10 people dancing attendance on him. I said, look, what sort of business are you doing? He says, I came to know that Bengal has got no fish. So I am collecting the fish from these lakes of the Suratgarh lakes, which is in the middle of the desert, where the Indira Gandhi Canal waters come. I mean, the masher fish, 3 feet long. And he says, I'm collecting these here. And I've hired 2 railway wagons, which are completely cold, with ice and air conditioning. I put these fish inside here and I'm exporting them to Bengal. Have you heard that Rajasthan desert exported fish to Calcutta when Calcutta got no fish from East Bengal? The chef made millions, right? So this is the desert, very, very fertile, provided there's water. Now we had shifting sand dunes, for example, right? Near the border with Pakistan. Now this is the place where a number of actions took place in 1971. For instance, near the border from beyond Jaisalmer, the Pakistanis tried to have an attack and came to grief because they were attacked by Air Force and by a very strong resistance by an army company that was there. Place called beyond Jaisalmer, place called Thanot. And over there, the road that we had constructed had shifting sand dunes. Now, a sand dune, let me explain. Much of this was seen during my command of the 2nd Armored Brigade also. The sand dunes are very long, maybe 5 kilometers long. So there's a knuckle end, which is very high, may go up to 2,000 feet, 1,000 feet, and 5 kilometers long, sloping downwards. And where the knuckle end is, the sand dunes precipitates down like that. The edge there, all sand, is a fine edge like a razor blade. You can touch it with your finger and you spot the edge. And the sand is in lahariya. Have you seen these Rajasthani women wearing clothes which are lahariya? Which is that design that's taken from the sand dune. Because the sand is like that because of the wind. The southwest monsoon comes and the sand is picked up and deposited. So you get long sand dunes southwest to northeast. So when you're traveling the desert, you come to a sand dune, you can see where the knuckle end is. And if you are wise enough to see where the tail end is, you know that that is northeast, that direction. Because the southwest move goes from southwest to northeast, and so all the sand dunes are facing that way. So these sand dunes, because they were shifting, they would cover the road with sand. So if there was a wind or a storm, there was no road because all sand. So what the government did, and the Rajasthan government, and I think central ecological people, they started seeding the sand. That means you take a helicopter or a small aircraft and you throw seeds into the sand. If you're lucky enough and the rain comes down, little rain comes, they sprout into little bushes. And those bushes stop this shifting sand dune from shifting and they become firm. So then going on with the result, if you can bring water and if you can bring seeds, you can have a jungle over there if you wish. We are creating certain jungles in areas where we don't want the Pakistani tanks and all to move. With the assistance of these people who make the Wimco matches, they put up poplar trees. You see, the poplar trees are growing very fast. In 10 years, it takes for a poplar tree to grow up and die. So every year they lay a line of poplar trees, and the distance between each tree is about what you want. You don't want a tank to come through, so they're only 3 feet apart. If you don't want a human being to come through, they are 1 foot apart. And they grow, and every 10 years you're cutting one set and putting a new set. So certain areas of the desert can be blocked for ingress by enemy tanks or soldiers. So greening of the desert is also part of the army's effort there, and the 2 Corps was very much involved in that. Now, in an exercise in this area, there is from the Indira Gandhi Canal a single canal made called the Gang Canal. Now, the height of sand dunes being what it is, Indira Gandhi Canal is lower, so there are a series of pumps, about 10 pumps, and 2 pipes going up to bring the water to a certain height, and then it flows by gravity for the rest of the distance to Bikaner to give Bikaner drinking water. So that is an obstacle, and we have had a set of exercises done. One side of the Bikaner Canal was a defense by a division, and some tanks. The other side were the attacking forces, armored division attacking and infantry division attacking. So these things were laid on, and with paradrops. Now the army commander, that means the boss, Shimla, when I went there, was a person called Inder Gill, Lieutenant General Inder Gill, a very interesting man. He joined World War II in the British Army as a soldier, a Tommy, in the engineering corps. And he, after the war was over, he liked India, and he was sweet on a lady who was Indian, so he married her. And then he decided to join the Indian Army, commissioned as a second lieutenant. He rose up from that, he became an army commander. He joined the parachutists, so he's a paratrooper. So there are very interesting tales about him. My elder brother, who's a paratrooper, knows much more about him than I do, but he's a very famous character. During the 1971 war, he was in charge of the military operations directorate. There was a person called Lieutenant General K.K. Singh first, who was in the military operations, but then K.K. Singh got promoted to Lieutenant General, and he got a corps. He commanded 1 corps during 71 war, and Inder Gill was made a Lieutenant General and Director General Military Operations. So during the World War II, the 71 war, he was in charge of military operations, directly under the army chief. So he was the army commander. He wanted to jump. He's a parachutist. So he said, for your exercise, have a battalion of parachutists jumping, and I'm going to be the first man out of the aeroplane. Now, we were very worried because he's the army commander. If he lands on a rock or something and breaks his leg, it won't be very good for us. So we went on, selected a nice dropping zone with soft sand and all that sort of thing. And I had a colonel under me called Ojala, who was he was a paratrooper. He's from Gunners. He assisted a lot in laying out the dropping zone, it is called. Parachutists have to come and drop in a dropping zone in the middle of the night. You see? So these aircraft come, carrying all these troops, large aircraft. And then at the particular point, there's a beacon that he's given an order. The pilot opens the rear doors, and these people start jumping out, and they come down. And at that time, Zuru Bakshi had left the corps, and the person who had taken over was again Zuru Bakshi was from the 5th Gurkhas, that's an infantry battalion. And Lieutenant General M.L. Shibber had taken over. So he was the corps commander. He and I in a jeep with Brigadier Adam, man called Tawari. We were bouncing around the desert in the middle of the night to go and see this paradrop. And I must say, very efficiently done. The Air Force was a bit reluctant to practice these things because the enemy is supposed to have a lot of radars, and it's very easy for them to pick up these big aircraft and shoot at them with missiles. So we said, that's all right, we are jumping, and whether they pick us up or they don't pick us up, this has to be done. And we have every intention of using para jumps in the war. In the 71 war, we did have a para jump by a para battalion led by Kulwant Pannu, Lieutenant Colonel, whom I knew very well. I spoke about the 71 war, and he landed just north of Dhaka. That is one of the reasons why we managed to surround Dhaka so fast. See, so did a parachute jump there. Right. So in Corps headquarters, we did this. Now, we also required air support. Now, a lot of discussion has to take place between the Army and the Air as to how to give air support, because an Air Force pilot wants to come low in his fighter aircraft. He's flying very fast. Because if he comes low, he's not picked up by enemy radar. Then when he's got a target where the enemy border is, then he climbs up, acquires the target, shoots at it, and comes back low. Another problem with them is that if they get shot up, they want to limp back home. And they may come by any side to try and get back to some airfield in India rather than land in Pakistan. So when they are traveling, they want freedom of movement in the air. But now we've got helicopters. In the 65 war, we had to bounce around in jeeps and jongas and all that sort of thing to go from one end to the other. I mean, in a Corps headquarters, if you are near Bias, like I described in the 65 war, and you have to go down to Khemkaran to see the battle going, it took you 2.5-3 hours, bouncing around on a horrible road, driving like a bat out of hell. But the point of issue is that if you have a helicopter, then your commanders can go in a helicopter and do the job in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. So we had helicopters going up and flying. So the Air Force would keep telling us that, sorry, you can't use helicopters, because if we've got a task and we are flying and suddenly this helicopter comes, we might bang into it. That will be an accident because we are flying low. And then we had to come to equations with the Air Force. So what is the height that you fly at? He says 300 feet. So we are all right. A helicopter will fly lower than 300. He says, no, but if I am flying very fast, my pilot is flying very fast, and suddenly a blob of a helicopter comes up, it disturbs his concentration and he's not able to control his aircraft properly. Lot of discussion. And I must give it to you that Western Army commander at that time was a very good man, and he agreed with many of my projection of points, which the local Air Force person, you have an Air Force group captain helping you with air support. He was not agreeing with many of the things, but the higher commanders did accept that the Army's requirements are paramount, not the Air Force. We believe that the Air Force is really a supporting arm for the Army. They don't believe that. They believe that you are a fighting arm which has to go into enemy territory and fight the enemy. But they've got aircraft which are supposed to do close support to Army, and they've got aircraft to do long-range bombing of enemy airfields and so on. So there's a lot of dichotomy between the Army and the Air Force as to how these aircraft are to be used. Now, a lot of effort is being made on this because it is a very important point. We are also watching what Europe does and what America does, because you do need very close air support to take out certain targets which are blocking your advance. And this question is still under discussion. In fact, even today, General Rawat was no more. He was the Chief of Defense Staff. He was working on this business of coordination between the Army and the Navy and the Air Force, mostly Air Force and Army. And there's another one with the Air Force and Navy. See? Navy has aircraft carriers, so it has its own close support over its ships. But if there's a major attack, they need Air Force from the mainland to come and help out, see? Or to pick up enemy targets. There's a lot of coordination required here. You will appreciate that there are two separate services and there are three separate services, and they don't necessarily agree with the method of handling a particular problem. And there's a lot of requirement of coordination between these three services, which is being attempted. So now we had all this experience.